I'll speak in English just because my entire career has been in English, so I'm just more comfortable, and I think everyone understands English here. I started in Moldova when I was 15, so that was about 16 years ago. And the journey started from a blog, which was actually quite unusual for back then. As you know, 15 years ago, Moldova, the only blogging that was being done was like political blogging. So I remember whenever people would ask, oh, what is this thing you're doing? And I'd say, oh, I'm fashion blogging. And they'd be like, oh, you're one of those political activists. I'm like, not quite, but okay. So it started from a blog. It then went into Instagram, etc. The entire journey that you know. But at some point, I realized that one, I was feeling that the market was changing and, the digital sort of career wasn't going to last long. And two, I realized that it wasn't quite what I wanted to do, because in order to have a very successful digital career as an influencer, as a content creator, you need to be online 24/7. You really need to be able to share everything in your life, to really open up in order to engage the audience. And it just was not for me. I'm quite a private person. I didn't actually enjoy being in the spotlight. So I decided, what am I going to do? So at some point just before COVID, I started rethinking my entire career, and then COVID hit, and I went into a completely different stage of my life, which is actually working more behind the scenes in consulting. And that started with sustainability consulting, and now it's mostly luxury consulting, creative consulting, and so on. Which is good, because actually fast forward 2025, and a lot of people are saying that the influencer era is dead. Personally, I wouldn't say it's quite dead, but it has shifted a lot, especially in the West. So I guess I made a career change just in time. And today I wanted to talk just a little bit of a general, what is coming up next, because we've all seen so many changes in the past few years, and many people are quite confused, frankly, with, wars happening and social movements and sustainability. Is it happening? Is it not happening? AI, is it going to take over our lives or not? So let's dive into that a little bit. A cultural reset. I think we have all felt after COVID that the world was just never the same. And it does have precedent. During the Lisbon earthquake in 1755, people started to reconsider their relationship with God. During the previous pandemic in 1918, people changed their attitude towards nature. It brought around more architectural movements, it brought around a new style, and it really reconnected people with the outdoors. And then COVID happens, and we're all just here and kind of confused. I think most of you are saying, how was that 5 years ago? I don't know how that was 5 years ago. It feels like it was yesterday. But somehow 5 years have passed, and the world just doesn't feel the same. Maybe it's a good thing. Now on to fashion, tech, culture. How does that all connect? My background is predominantly in fashion. And one of the funny, maybe not so funny things, people, when they hear that you work in fashion, they're always, it's not such a serious industry. Fashion, it's just whatever. Well, that not such serious industry actually hires 400 million people around the world. It is the livelihood of a lot of communities in poorer areas. It is a big connector to culture, to music, to cinematography, and to tech most recently. And it can't not be part of our lives, because whether you think you're participating in fashion or not, you are, because you're wearing clothes, and those clothes were made by someone under certain conditions that had a certain experience of a certain background, certain identity. So it all connects. And the tech part has become quite interesting. I don't know if some of you maybe remember, Burberry was actually one of the first ones to really deep dive into technology. In 2010, they were actually the first fashion brand to live stream. It sounds so silly today, but to live stream their show. Nobody was doing that at the time. And then they were the first ones to use an iPhone to live stream the show. And that actually led to the lady from Burberry being hired by Apple, and she redesigned the entire Genius Bar Apple store experience. So fashion for the past 10 years has really started connecting with technology. And it's an interesting connection also because with AI, we see that a lot of the brands are starting to use it in different ways. Some are using it more for visual communication in their campaigns. But there is also an interesting solution line within AI because, for instance, Chanel is a good example if you want to look a bit more into it, because they're actually using AI to tackle their supply chain, how much material they're using, make it more efficient, make it less unsustainable. So, as much as we demonize AI, it can also be a solution. And this actually brings me to this little story from the Industrial Revolution. So in the mid-1800s in the UK, there was actually a movement starting to take place. And that was predominantly in the textile sector, actually. And a story that stuck with me is the needle makers. So when machines came around, needle makers were very scared that they would be out of a job because suddenly these automatic machines could produce needles. And they protested for quite some time until it came out that the Industrial Revolution, as we know, completely changed the world and brought about more jobs than were ever seen before. As a result, more people were hired. It created an entire middle class that was not really prevalent before. And needle workers actually started getting hired by these companies and in much bigger numbers. And the needle production went from, I think, 5 million per month to about 50 million per month. So it created an entire new industry. But people were very scared at the beginning because there was this uncertainty and novelty, and they didn't know what to expect from it. And of course, with AI, it's slightly different because for the first time in our history, AI does have the potential to fully replace humans. But I do still think while we have the opportunity, and we do for, I don't know how much time, because possibly 10, 15, 20 years, we will be out of the workforce equation. So for now, you can harness AI actually to perhaps earn the money you want to earn. So one day if you get replaced by a machine, you're not scared. But you can use AI to refine your ideas, to simplify your process, to amplify your audience, explore new ideas, and curate the ideas that the AI is giving you. So the way I approach it, whilst it's very scary, and I've been keeping up with this for I think the past 10 years, because I remember when the Financial Times and The Economist started writing first about AI, and it was this very uncertain thing about 10 years ago, and it was more on the positive side because it wasn't quite here. And now that we see it in our day-to-day lives and we see that it is replacing most jobs, actually, especially in the creative industry, right? Photographers, makeup artists, models, set designers, everything, it becomes quite scary. So the way I look at it is, it's there and we can't do anything about it. So we might as well actually try and use it to our advantage in order to be more productive and to get better results that would otherwise take much longer. And I think you'll hear much more about how to actually use that from my husband later today, because he's going to deep dive into AI. And this AI idea and the uncertainty of the future has definitely also brought a fear of spending money. So right now, there is a bit of a, dilemma. A lot, as you can see, a lot of reports are saying consumerism is dead and, no one is buying. But then others are saying it's actually up and people are buying. So which one is it? And I don't think you can quite put your finger on it because we have so many external factors now, political situations, interest going up, the AI fear, the fear of the future, etc., that you can't quite foresee what exactly is going to happen. So in my opinion, consumerism is not dead, but it has shifted. And you can see it a lot with Gen Z. Actually, for me, it's always very interesting to analyze them because they're very passionate, loud kind of part of society. And usually they speak about sustainability and that they care, and that's how their purchasing power is being directed towards more sustainable options. But when you actually look at their spending power, they're one of the biggest investors in fast fashion. So which one is it? On one hand, they think that they're passionate about sustainability, but on the other, they are still consuming. And I think that's the majority of society. We're not quite sure which way we want to go. And speaking about luxury, because I am in luxury specifically, the luxury sector has definitely been one of the ones that is on the down. And that actually started in China first, the past few years after COVID. And I think there are quite a lot of reasons for that. First of all, luxury has just changed. Back in the day, if you wanted a luxury quality piece, you knew you could only go to certain brands. It was maybe a Dior, it was an Hermes, it was a Louis Vuitton, and you knew that they produce these very high quality pieces. Fast forward 2025, and there are millions of brands. Fashion has become really democratized, and you don't need to go for these ultra luxury fashion brands in order to get a good quality piece. And on the contrary, a lot of the luxury brands have really reduced in quality. So people are opting for other brands that perhaps are more niche, perhaps they use more ethical supply chains, etc. And the important thing with luxury is that it is still there, and actually it's just changed. And it has changed in the way where the consumer is now a participator. People don't want to be told, oh, go buy this because, it's Chanel. They want to feel why they're buying it, and they want to participate in the emotion and in the brand identity. And that's why so much of the luxury is actually moving on to hospitality. And not just hospitality, sports, day-to-day lives. We've seen a lot of the luxury conglomerates invest in hotels, restaurants. Prada just opened a new restaurant in Shanghai. A lot of the brands are partnering up with sporting events, designing the cup, having their own windows and booths at sporting events, but also engaging on a deeper level with communities, because somehow in this almost paradoxical way, small communities and developing communities have actually become a status symbol for the wealthy. I'm going to this place to help that local community. I've been there, I've experienced what that life is. And perhaps to us in Moldova, it's quite silly at times because we grew up with those kind of grandparents and we know that. And we know that it's not a luxury status or just a cosplay or costume you can put on by participating in that. It's much deeper than it. But this movement to participate in local communities is quite prevalent in fashion, and as well as the sustainability movement, which brings me to my next point. And this one is actually, if you were yesterday, I spoke here in a more sort of informal setting, and we debated a lot about sustainability. And I have been an advocate for sustainability for nearly 10 years. I have lobbied for sustainability. I have been part of so many different campaigns. I've been inside companies advising. I've seen the supply chain. I've seen sustainability from every side. Like I was saying yesterday, I tried veganist, pescatarian, that, the other. One was, one didn't work for one reason. Then I realized that one actually uses more resources. Let's move to the next movement. So sustainability, in short, is just such a complex issue. What is sustainability? I think if I ask each one of you, you'll all have very different answers to what sustainability is, because you can't really pinpoint it. It's huge. These are the sort of, let's say, universal goals adopted by the UN. I think many of you probably know the Sustainable Development Goals, and they give you a sort of general idea of understanding what sustainability is as a concept, but they still don't really go deep enough. And then we have the ESGs, which is more of a framework of sustainability, and this is more just criteria that companies use to really say how responsible they're producing, what their impact is. And there's been a lot of talk, for the past 5 years, especially about ESGs. And the problem with ESGs is that whilst it's a framework, it doesn't really lead anywhere. It's just companies reporting how they're doing things. But then at the end, there's nobody punishing them if they're doing things wrong. And the reason for that is that just have a look at how big sustainability is. I mean, you can probably take a picture of that and maybe later just, look through it yourself, because the thing is, you can't really say, I am sustainable or I'm taking care of sustainability, because which one are you taking care of? passionate about clean air and water and land? Or are you passionate about job creation or biodiversity or global climate change? And sometimes these things go against each other, like, again, we were talking about this yesterday. Certain green energy might actually harm certain animals in the process. So animal protection groups are actually against certain green energy usage. So it's all just so broad that you really have to decide what part of it really speaks to you. Because, if you're passionate about everything, you're really passionate about nothing. And I think the way to approach sustainability, especially in this era where it's on the decline, is to find your true cause, a cause that actually connects to who you are and your identity. Just look through that list and think, what actually is connected to where I come from, to my community, to how I grew up. Because if you're just going to target all of the sustainability points, you're just going to lose. You're never going to get them right. And I think the best way to approach it, and this is how I've come to it, because my first approach was always very idealistic, very global, sustainability on the big, big level. Let's change the world. And that just does not happen. It happens very, very rarely with very unique people. And even that takes decades. So thinking about the community where you can actually have an impact is actually the most powerful thing you can do. And the reason for that is even governments don't know what they're doing. How are you meant to know? And we've seen that with the EU Green Claims Directive. There has been a lot of pushback from the sustainability community that I'm personally part of, which is more on the natural fiber activism, because the EU Green Claim Directive, for instance, looks at a framework that actually implies that synthetic fibers are the most sustainable fibers. I don't agree with that. And a lot of sustainability experts don't agree with that. And we've tried to lobby, and a lot of people have been saying this for years now, so it got very confusing. And this, if you want to look into it, that's what it's called. It's the PEF. PEF, it's the product environmental footprint, and it's very complex, and they haven't even finished it, and they just got stuck because it was too complex. So that's where, how can you, a lot of people have been talking about the digital passport, and it came up yesterday as well, that you've heard that the digital passport will come in place in a few years, and, what will happen there, but I can't tell you what will happen, because even the EU doesn't know what will happen, because they haven't made up their mind what is sustainable and what isn't, and that's just the reason why sustainability is so complex. And then you actually put on top of that things like the change in presidency in the US that, again, has had a huge impact on the sustainability movement in Europe, because suddenly, actually, it's economic growth that matters and not sustainability. So all of these led to quite unfortunate news this year, which is that the EU Parliament actually froze a lot of the sustainability legislation, and we don't know when they'll pick it up. They're saying maybe they'll delay it by 1 year, others are saying 2027, but it's not really clear. And I think that's exactly the reason why sustainability is in such a disadvantage right now, because for quite a while, sustainability was sort of this talking point, this PR that a lot of the companies were using. They got punished for greenwashing. People got confused. What is sustainability? What isn't sustainability? Money was being invested, but not quite in the right places. And all of this just came through because the economy was doing quite well, frankly, because sustainability at the end of the day is something that touches on everyone, but not everyone can actually invest in it. And you see it in Moldova whenever I come back. If you go to the village of Moldova, if I go to see my grandparents who are farmers and who can barely survive on their pension, and I tell them about sustainability, maybe don't use a plastic bottle, use a glass one. Oh, the glass one costs 4 times more, sure. It's not a priority for people that are struggling. So once our economy flattens, sustainability is one of the first to go. And this is the reason that I think sustainability should be something more authentic that speaks to your local identity and community. And one of the sort of branches of sustainability, like we saw before, was the human factor, right? And an interesting one is, you've probably seen these, quite a lot of the luxury brands and fashion in general have had histories of appropriating not just Romanian culture, also Mexican, Native American, and so on and so forth. And this is always very strange to me, because I think it's such a lost opportunity to actually create a product that could become quite viral with a very strong story. And this is what leads me to what I see the new sustainability is, and it's the more tangible impact. It is community projects specifically, so working not on a continental level, maybe not even on a national level, but actually working with your local communities. You know, in your region, try and make changes. Advocate for more tree planting, advocate for more bicycle lanes, advocate for the right rubbish collection, and so on and so forth. Things that you can actually change within your city, within your village, within your part of the community. As well as social procurement. And social procurement is something I really love. And this brings me to the previous page of the cultural appropriation, because social procurement is actually a concept that a friend of mine from the UN introduced me to. And her idea was, sustainability in the world is so screwed. And honestly, I think a lot of us on the sustainability side are kind of losing hope. And we realize that there is just not enough being done for us to meet the targets and to actually keep climate change from evolving. So can we, at least in the meantime, give an opportunity to more disadvantaged people to have a better life? Seeing we can't change these big things on a big level. And that is actually something that could be such a great opportunity for brands to work with social communities and for you to invest in goods that actually help disadvantaged local communities. A great example of that is actually Chloe, and they work a lot with the UN, and they produce specific items in communities. This year they've been producing in communities in Egypt, and I've actually been in talks with this program to try and bring that to Moldova, because that's exactly the type of thing that we should have in the region. And you as well, if you're business founders or, you know, if you're in certain organizations, this is something that we can turn into an opportunity. Why should they just appropriate these styles when they can actually come here and select local communities, women artisans who know how to produce them, and create a whole collaboration that would actually be a beautiful message, it would fit their sustainability ethical agenda, and would probably do much better with connecting with the consumer, because they're actually helping real tangible people, not just changing things on a big scale. So that's kind of my little short of what I think is next. It's a very uncertain time, and I think the reality right now is to stay authentic and do things that you genuinely think you connect with, rather than what you think society expects of you, or what you think, you know, the sort of trend is, because that will always connect with the consumer much better, and it will also keep you safer from potential new rules and fines and so on.